Texas is supposed to be the land of freedom. Big skies, big pride, big personalities. A place where the government stays out of your business, where people do what they want and answer to nobody. That's the myth, anyway, the one they put on hats and bumper stickers and the license plates of lifted trucks. But hidden behind the cowboy mythology, tucked deep inside the legal code of this enormous, contradictory, larger-than-life state, is a scrapbook of rules so specific, so bizarre, and so completely unbelievable that they sound like someone made them up on a dare. They weren't. Some are hilarious. Some are oddly controlling. Some are funny for about 3 seconds, and then quietly unsettling for much longer than that. But all of them tell a story about fear, about power, about what people decide needs to be written into law and what that says about them. So let's step into the strange side of Texas, because the truth here is weirder than the joke. Before we get into the list, here's something worth understanding about weird laws in general. They are not random. They don't fall out of the sky. Somebody wrote them down. Somebody voted on them. Somebody decided, at some specific moment in history, that this particular thing was dangerous enough, embarrassing enough, or threatening enough to require a rule. Weird laws are cultural fingerprints. They show you what a place feared, what it valued, and what it was desperately trying to control. Texas makes that especially interesting, because the public identity of Texas, tough, free, independent, don't tread on me, sits in fascinating tension with the legal history full of laws about exactly what you can wear, how you can behave in public, and what you are absolutely not allowed to do with cheese. This isn't just a list of trivia. It's a tour through the hidden psychology of a state. 10 laws, each one weirder than it sounds, each one pointing at something bigger than itself. Let's count them down. Number 10. In Texas, it's illegal to sell your own eye. That sounds like the setup to a joke. But Texas Penal Code Section 48.02 makes it a criminal offense to sell human organs. And yes, eyes are specifically included. Picture this. You're having a rough financial month. Really rough. You sit down, run the numbers, and think, well, I have 2 of them. A perfectly reasonable market exists, and then Texas law looks you dead in the face and says, absolutely not. Now, there are serious reasons for this law. Black markets for organs are a documented global problem. The concern is real and the intent is legitimate. But there's something darkly funny about the fact that in a state that enshrines individual liberty above almost everything else, the government draws a hard line at you doing whatever you want with your own eyeballs, your body, their rules. Number 9. In Texas, you cannot milk someone else's cow without permission. At first, this sounds like a punchline looking for a setup. Who's out here rogue milking livestock? What's the threat level on unauthorized dairy activity? But picture a stretch of rural Texas, 1890, unfenced land, wandering cattle, neighbors whose property lines are more suggestion than surveyed fact. Somebody's cow wanders near your barn. You milk it. You didn't steal the cow. You just borrowed an output. Texas had to make that illegal because it happened, enough times that it needed a law. What this law is really about is property. Texas property law has always been serious in a way that outsiders underestimate. In a state built on land and livestock, Someone taken from your animal was not a quirk, it was a crime. It was almost a moral violation. The milk was never just milk. Number 8. You may not shoot a buffalo from the second story of a hotel, which means at some point this required legislation. Somewhere in Texas, and the most likely culprit is somewhere along the frontier towns of the 1870s or 1880s, someone with a rifle, a room with a view, and catastrophically poor judgment looked down from their hotel window, saw a buffalo in the street, and made a decision. It did not go well for anyone involved, presumably including the guests in the lobby. But here's what's underneath the absurdity. Buffalo were being slaughtered across Texas at an almost incomprehensible rate during the late 1800s. The herds that had once numbered in the tens of millions were being wiped out systematically. That law wasn't just about hotel safety. I believe it was a tiny, awkward gesture at a much larger catastrophe already well underway. Number 7. In some Texas municipalities, it's illegal to take more than 3 sips of beer while standing up. Read that again slowly. 3. Sips, standing. This is one of those laws that sounds like satire, but almost certainly emerged from a very sincere place: the temperance movement. The late 1800s and early 1900s saw enormous moral pressure around alcohol in Texas, driven heavily by religious communities who viewed public drinking as a gateway to disorder, violence, and general moral collapse. The solution? You can drink, but only if you sit down. Apparently, the thinking was that a seated man is a calmer man. A man on his feet with alcohol is a man who might do something. It's controlling in a very specific, very Texan way. Not prohibition exactly, just supervised freedom. Drink if you must, but do it where we can keep an eye on you. Number 6. Dusting a public building with a feather duster is against the law. This one moves fast because it's almost pure absurdity with very little redemption arc. There's no dark history here, no moral panic, no blood, just a very specific piece of municipal code that someone, somewhere, decided was necessary. The leading theory is that feather dusters were considered ineffective. They moved dust around rather than removing it, and some fastidious city official decided that public hygiene required more serious tools. That's the whole story. But think about that for a moment. Someone cared so much about how public buildings were cleaned that they specified the instrument, not the outcome. The instrument. Texas, where freedom is paramount unless you are choosing the wrong cleaning tool. Number 5. And this is where the video shifts. In Texas, a woman adjusting her stocking in public, even while alone inside a phone booth, was considered an act of indecency. This one isn't funny, or it's for about a second before you realize what it's actually saying. This law, which appeared in various city codes in the early to mid-20th century, was not about stockings. It was about controlling when and where a woman's body was allowed to be visible. It was about the idea that female bodies in public spaces were inherently a problem, inherently disruptive, something to be regulated. The phone booth detail is what makes it truly revealing. She was alone, no one could see her, and it was still illegal. Because the law was never about public decency in any meaningful sense, it was about the message. Women's bodies required permission to exist in public, even in private. That's the law behind the law. Number 4. You cannot sell Limburger cheese in Texas on a Sunday. Back to the absurd. And we need this one, because the last segment was heavy and this video still has ground to cover. Limburger is, famously, one of the most aggressively odorous cheeses in the world. The kind of cheese that announces itself from the next room. The kind of cheese with a social life more assertive than most people's. Sunday cheese restrictions almost certainly stem from blue laws, regulations rooted in religious tradition that governed what could and could not be sold on the Sabbath. But Limburger specifically, the targeted nature of this is impressive. Someone decided that the Lord's Day deserved better, that among all the things inappropriate for a Sunday morning, pungent German cheese ranked high enough to require formal prohibition. Amen. Number 3. Carrying wire cutters in your pocket is illegal in Texas. This one sounds trivial. It's not. In the late 1800s, the open range, the vast, unfenced grassland that ranchers had grazed for generations, was being closed off by barbed wire. Cattle barons were fencing in land. Small farmers and struggling ranchers, suddenly locked out of grazing land they had always used, started cutting the fences at night. The fence-cutting wars were real. People were killed over barbed wire. Entire communities were destabilized. Texas had to step in. The law banning wire cutters or restricting their carrying was not about the tool. It was about a society coming apart at the seams over who owned the land, who controlled the water, and who had the right to exist on the Texas range. Small farmers carried wire cutters because they were desperate. The law made their desperation a crime. That isn't quirky. That's history. Number 2. In Texas, you can be arrested for public intoxication while on horseback. Before you say that's everywhere, understand. Texas took this very seriously because for a long time, in a huge portion of the state, a horse was not a novelty. It was a car, a tool, a necessity. And the idea of a drunk man on a 1,000-pound animal in the middle of a town was not a comedy sketch. It was a genuine public safety crisis. So the law makes sense. Here's the irony. Texas has always fetishized the cowboy, the independence, the lone rider, the man who answers to nobody. That image is on every tourism campaign, every political speech, every piece of Texas mythology ever produced. And yet, somewhere in the legal code, there has always been a rule about what that cowboy is allowed to do, where he can ride, how sober he has to be. Even the myth has a leash. Number 1. In Texas, you can carry a loaded gun. You can own multiple firearms. In many contexts, you can open carry them. The gun laws in Texas are among the most permissive in the country. But if you point an unloaded gun at someone as a threat, even if it cannot fire, even if no one was ever in danger, that's a criminal offense. Think about that. A loaded weapon is your right. An empty one, used as a bluff, is a crime. The law isn't irrational. The fear behind it's legitimate. Threatening someone with any object causes psychological harm, loaded or not. But as a symbol of Texas, it's almost perfect. The power of the gun is protected. The theater of the gun is punished. What matters is the real thing. The image without the substance that Texas cannot tolerate. And maybe that's the whole state in one law. The myth has to be real, or it has to be silent. 10 laws. 10 now windows into something that looks like trivia but isn't. The woman in the phone booth adjusting her stocking. the small farmer with wire cutters in his pocket, the drunk cowboy on a horse, the militia with feather dusters and pungent cheese and their very specific feelings about where you are allowed to milk a cow. Laws like these do not just happen. They are written by people who were afraid of something, or offended by something, or desperate to hold something in place before it changed. They are little fossils of human anxiety, pressed into legal code and left there long after the original fear faded. Texas is fascinating for this exercise, because the gap between the myth and the reality is so wide, and these laws sit right in that gap. The state that built itself on freedom has always been deeply, relentlessly preoccupied with control. The state that celebrates the individual has always had strong opinions about what individuals are allowed to do. That isn't a contradiction, that's just honesty. Every culture has strange laws. Every place has rules that, in hindsight, reveal more than they intended. Texas just makes it cinematic. And maybe that's the wildest law of all, the unwritten one. The one that says, believe in the myth, even when the reality keeps leaking through. If you made it this far, drop a comment with the weirdest law you've ever heard from your own state. Because Texas does not have a monopoly on this, but I do think it's better at the accent.